The mustard gas incident at Bari. Despite the scale and the intensity of the fighting, the Second World War did not see the Germans or the Western Allies use poison gas against each other in battle, or in bombing raids against each other's cities. However, both the Axis and Western Allies built large stockpiles of gas artillery shells and bombs in preparation for a chemical war that thankfully never started. The Nazis had developed new chemical weapons like sarin and tabun during the interwar years, and throughout the Second World War produced and stored tons of these compounds to be delivered via shell or bomb. The Americans and British, for their part, manufactured several types of chemical agents such as lewisite, phosgene, and most notably sulfur mustard, more commonly known as mustard gas. In 1943, with the Allies marching up the Italian peninsula, the war had begun to turn decisively against the Germans. There was a definite possibility that the Nazis would attack with gas to regain an advantage. In preparation for this possibility, Allied High Command ordered that additional chemical warfare training be conducted to prepare the troops. They also made the decision to ship a large stockpile of bombs containing sulfur mustard to Bari, Italy, aboard the SS John Harvey, in order to be ready to respond should chemical warfare break out. The John Harvey was still in Bari waiting to be unloaded, however, when on December 2, 1943, a massive German air raid tore up the city and harbor. Bari, lit up at night and weakly defended, was an easy target. The bombers managed to destroy 17 ships and damage another 6. Over 1,000 sailors, soldiers, and Italian civilians were killed, and many more injured as a result of the raid. One of those ships was the Harvey, still fully loaded with its cargo of 2,000 mustard gas bombs. The SS John Harvey was struck by a German bomb and exploded. This damage caused a large cloud of sulfur mustard to be released into the air, and liquid sulfur mustard to spill into the harbor, where it mixed with fuel leaking from the more than 24 destroyed and damaged ships. Sailors and dock workers who had jumped into the harbor to escape the explosions and fires of the bombing raid soon found themselves unknowingly swimming through a toxic mix of fuel and liquid sulfur mustard. Medical personnel were quickly on scene, but were swamped by the large number of people needing assistance in the aftermath of the raid. They sensibly prioritized helping those with obvious serious injuries like severe burns and wounds from shrapnel. Because Allied High Command wanted to keep its chemical warfare preparations secret and did not want to incite the Germans into starting chemical warfare, the nature of exactly what the Harvey was carrying was a tightly guarded secret. Knowledge about the mustard gas was on a strictly need-to-know basis, and those who did not need to know were told that the Harvey was carrying ammunition. Thus, the soaked men pulled from the harbor, who were not obviously injured, were assumed to be suffering from exposure to the cold winter water. They were given blankets to wrap themselves in, and also hot tea to drink. Unfortunately for everyone, the John Harvey's captain and all of the Harvey's crew who knew the truth about its cargo had been killed in the raid. No one was able to warn medical staff about the possibility of mustard exposure. Sulfur mustard does its damage by attacking the airways, blistering the lungs and throats of those exposed, and also causes internal damage at the cellular level. The most recognizable effect of exposure, however, is the appearance of large blisters on victims. Mustard causes large skin blisters to form that are extremely painful and can become infected. Exposure, although painful, however, is rarely fatal if those affected are able to be quickly decontaminated. Sulfur mustard decontamination consists of immediately stripping those affected of their clothes and bathing the affected area with clean water and soap. Mustard can also contaminate equipment, so it is important to decontaminate areas where the gas is settled by spraying these areas with a bleach solution and then rinsing the bleach off these surfaces. If the sulfur mustard is not washed off and remains on the surfaces, it will continue to blister the skin of whoever touches those surfaces, and if there is enough of it remaining, it can continue to kill. These decontamination actions were not initially taken. Men who were pulled from the water were left in their original clothes 4 hours. Unfortunately, this meant that the mustard had continual contact with their skin, and they continued to inhale fumes from their clothes. This was not good. As a result of this continued prolonged exposure, these men developed massive skin blisters, and their health began to rapidly deteriorate. By the morning of December 3rd, the first of these men began to die of this mysterious ailment, diagnosed by medical staff as NYD dermatitis, which stands for Not Yet Diagnosed Dermatitis. Although some medical staff at Bari had already begun to suspect that chemical weapons may have been responsible for these seemingly puzzling deaths, the arrival of U.S. Army surgeon Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Alexander and his subsequent investigation confirmed its presence. Stuart noted a slight garlic smell, which is the signature scent of mustard gas, in the medical ward and in the area around the harbor. His investigative work was crucial in tracing the source of the mustard to the John Harvey and in preventing more mustard gas deaths. All told, 83 deaths were directly attributed to mustard, and an additional 649 people were injured due to their exposure. The total number of deaths due to mustard is probably much higher because Allied numbers did not include the unknown number of Italian civilians who were affected. The raid and its aftermath were a disaster for the Allies. Despite efforts to keep the entire incident quiet, rumors about what had happened at Bari made their way to Nazi Germany. Axis Sally, the English-speaking Nazi propagandist, would take to the airwaves and make a short broadcast referencing the incident. Then, in February 1944, 3 months after the incident, Allied command would make a statement, admitting to the presence of mustard at Bari and reiterating their pledge to not be the first to deploy chemical weapons. U.S. records regarding this incident would only be declassified in 1959.